Yeah, we're live. Wrong cam, as always, as promised. Today we're going to talk about injector positioning. And one of the guys, I got a comment on. In fact, I think I got this a couple of times on the video that I posted on the Super Richie adjustable intake manifold for the LS. And actually, I showed a couple of photos of other applications as well. One of them was a Ford, and that one had injectors basically mounted on top of the plenum. And so the question was, what is that? Why are you doing that? And also, did it work? And can we see the results of that? And the reason that you're not seeing the results of it, because it didn't work. And we're going to talk about why it didn't work, but why you would try that. And I'll go ahead and show you a picture here in just a minute of what I'm talking about. There were, along with the LS, I also did these dual plenums for lots of other stuff. So in fact, the entire modular family, 2-valve, 3-valve, early 4-valve, and late 4-valve, mostly because it was easy because they all use the same plenums and they all use the same runners. All I had to do was configure some sort of bottom part for them so that they could share all those. But once we got through all the testing of doing runner lengths and doing connected versus non-connected, and I also ran a bunch of inlet tubes in front of the throttle body because the modular Fords had two 75 millimeter throttle bodies, and then we could just run 3-inch tubes off of those. And then I had these, from the local auto parts store, these cheesy kind of, although fairly effective, radius entries that a lot of guys use on, for Hondas and stuff with filters on them. So it's a good 3-inch radius entry. It works pretty well. So we use those, and I would just try different lengths of tubing because 3-inch straight tubing, pretty easy to come by. You could just put the air entry right on the throttle body. But quite honestly, when we're running two plenums and you're running two 75 millimeter throttle bodies, especially when you're doing it on a motor that's a 400 horsepower motor or 450 horsepower motor, two 75 millimeter throttle bodies is way more airflow than it needs. In fact, we have on some occasions when we've done these, when they're connected, we just run it through one throttle body. I've tried that test before, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to see if I can get my guy to cooperate again. I'm back on the other camera just because I like it better seems to work better with the green screen. So I've done lots of testing like that, but once you've gone through that whole regiment in your testing, you want to, try something else. And what the other thing that I tried was we tried, hey, let's place the injectors somewhere else. I can see if I can get this thing. Hey, look at that. I knew that there's a system for me to be able to do that. But what we wanted to do is try, because we know that changing the injectors, just like when we run a carburetor, when you run a carbureted combination, and you're adding fuel to the inlet track, you're cooling the air. We know that happens because we've seen it many times. When you do that, you add power. So by the same token, taking the injector off of the cylinder head or right at the base of the intake manifold, feeding the cylinder head, moving that up higher in the runner and injecting the fuel up there can yield power because, again, you have what you have is more time for charge cooling. And so I thought, well, let's, like I did with the Honda, that was an IR system, but like I did with that, let's inject the fuel right into the entry of the port. We'll get the most amount of cooling because that's more is better, right? And so that's what I did. I had that plenum, and in that plenum, we have a radius entry, and I'll show you. In fact, I can show you what that looks like. I'll show you why I thought that this would work. So I'm going to bring you guys around so you guys can see. So if you can see that, you can see that the plenum has basically a full radius air horn inside. And so what I was trying to do is put the injector right up here. We just drilled a hole and welded a bung for an injector bung up there, and then put the injector so that it would spray directly into there. And in fact, I'll show you what that. This is what that looked like. So you can see all the injectors in a row here, and then they're spraying hopefully into those air horns. And, this is our dual plenum deal, 275 millimeter AccuFab throttle bodies. And then we have a connection back here. And then on the video that I did yesterday or today, we just remove that plenum, and you can see what happens when we run it just by itself and when they're joined together. And when they're not joined together, you know, all sorts of, you know, it's all sorts of like super fun stuff here. So we'll try to get back and camera ready here. Let's see here. There we go. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do, and that's what I was trying to do with the injector positioning. I was trying to put it on top of the plenum and try to inject fuel there and make more power. Except that it didn't work. I'm going to see if I can get some more light over there. Yeah, there we go. Now it's freaking the camera out. We'll see. Okay, so it didn't work though. So what I needed to do is, like I did with the radiused air horns on the Honda, and I made a slider assembly to get the injectors basically kind of down into the port. You know, the injector was essentially touching the opening of the hole or the radiused air horn, and even down in it a little bit, so that we didn't get, and we still got fuel standoff during the RPM range, which is cool. So you could see the fuel actually coming up out of the port. You're like, oh, that should totally go the other direction, but it wasn't. But it did not work on this modular Ford. So we had to, you know, try something else. So I needed to make the injectors be inside the plenum, which is something I'm planning on doing. Or just put them. I was worried that even the reason I wanted them to be straight and directly on top of that, because I was worried about them being at an angle relative to the intake runner. I think that this would be much less critical the farther away that is from the valve, because it's all going to kind of, you know, especially when you get lots of airspeed, it should all go in there and work and find its way. That's the theory, but I like the idea of it being atomized and going straight in. So that's kind of what I wanted to do. And again, to find out whether or not that's an issue or not, you kind of would have to test that and figure that out. So we're going to have a poll for tonight. That really can't be a poll. I'm not really too happy with that. Okay, have you run, we're going to put and or, have you run relocated or multiple injectors? Have you ever? We'll see how that goes. I like doing the dual plenum ones. It gives you a lot of freedom. You on the dual plenum manifolds, you eliminate airflow as a possibility. So you're not just, okay, well, you put a bigger throttle body on it, so it made more power because you have a bigger throttle body. That's not it. The dual plenum, you know, if, like I said, if we have a 75 millimeter throttle body, will feed a 400 horsepower motor anyway. Two of them is way more than enough. In fact, like I said, we did some testing on the 2 valve, I believe it was, where we would keep one throttle body closed and just open one, and the power loss would be next to nothing. So it shows you that at the power level that we were at, the airflow need, at least of the, you know, of the single throttle body, was more than enough airflow. Because one of the comments that I would always get when I would do these tests is, well, yeah, you just, and this is them not really understanding what's going on, but well, yeah, you put another throttle body on there. You made all the power because you had 2 throttle bodies because it flows more. Like, and that's why I did that test. Like, no, that's actually not it. But you can't argue with a guy that already knows that he's right, even when he doesn't, even when he shouldn't know that he's right. So that's why I do those tests, so that I could tell them, hey, look, well, so it's not the throttle body. It's not because I had two of them. It's not because we had more airflow. The design of the manifold is what's doing this, and we know that because I ran a test where we didn't have the other throttle body open, and it still changed the power curve, because it's not the extra airflow offered by another throttle body. That's actually very, very minor in terms of power output. You might get to a situation like with this on the LS. We have a 700 horsepower motor, so it could theoretically use more airflow. But again, that's the benefit, or one of the benefits of this dual plenum design. The other thing being that it seems to make good power. It allowed me to adjust the runner length, and then allowed me, because I made these, I made the plenums straight up, and the plenum position was essentially parallel. So this made making the connection or not the connection at all the different runner lengths, because I want to test it on a lot of different runner lengths. Does it work better at high RPM or low RPM? We saw it works much better at low RPM. But this way, the connection or the not connection stays consistent. Otherwise, when I first did these, and I think I've shown you some of the photos of the modular Ford stuff, they came out at an angle. And then as I got longer, they went away from each other. That creates several problems. One is that we keep having to redo the throttle linkage, because it's a dual actual drive-by baling wire throttle linkage. And then it also changes the length of that connector pipe. And you're not just connecting it. When you add pipe length, you're also changing the Helmholtz resonance. You're changing the resonating frequency, because you've added volume to that. If you get that thing big enough, essentially you've added a third plenum. And so that resonating frequency will be different. In addition to them being joined or not joined, you're adding another thing to the equation. So having them go straight up, that part of it at least doesn't change. And as I said on the live feed earlier today, somebody mentioned, well, because I pointed out in the video that when we ran the Chevy one, you want it on and then off, you want it connected and not connected at a couple of different RPM ranges to try to get all the biggest, parts of the power gain that we see and not get the power losses. And he suggested doing a drive-by-wire throttle body, which I thought was a great idea, because then you could control that. Because I was going to initially we were just going to put a throttle body on there. And then I thought, why do I need to go to all that trouble? We're not going to open and close it. I just wanted to be able to open and close it and make the dyno testing quick. But now that we see what was going on, we could have just, we were going to rig up a, throttle lever or a string or a cable or whatever, and just pull it at the right RPM and then do the analog version of what he's talking about. But doing it with a drive-by-wire throttle body, kind of much cooler. It's a bird, it's a plane. Super Richie, yep. I'm able to leap small junkyard motors at a single bound. Admiral, you're getting around to the coyote video? If you want to have fun, go read the comments. Wonder where he went. A lot of work. Admiral, you did an injector swap on your motor? I have a question. Where did you get that carbon fiber cover for the fast? That was I believe that manifold belongs to the guys at Brian Tooley Racing, and I think that was a dipped one. Maybe it was either hydro dipped, or maybe it was a cover. I don't know. I don't know who did it. Warning about adding injectors inside of a big custom Wilson tall ram to add second set spring down the runner. Just make sure that you get it close enough. I got something that I'm going to be playing with here on a high ram too. Richard, did you know Mercury Marine made the double overhead cam versions? Yes, I did. Those are very cool. So a TBI revisit. I do want to do that also on a small block, but not on the high ram though. I've seen what you're describing on racing Ladas at ITBs. Yeah, if you take a look, Micah or Mika, I'm not sure. If you take a look at the Honda video that I did with the individual runner deals, it was a TWM IR setup, and then I made a custom Super Richie fuel rail assembly for it with a slider on it, so I can move the fuel rail basically in and out, just hang it off of the front. And they do this now. They offer this, but put the injectors in front of the air horn, and it does make more power like that. And it's not my original idea. I mean, racing had been doing this for years and years. Formula One had been doing it forever. Bam, 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 bam. Like to get my hands on double overhead cam Mercury heads. Yeah, my guess is it's more than just the heads. It's probably more involved than that. Does anyone have any experience or knowledge on a Wensler 2.4 high-rise intake manifold for Pontiacs? I've seen them, but I've never seen any testing on them. With great shame, I voted no, but I've always wanted to do a spray going upstream or even DFI. I've seen them try upstream stuff on boosted things. If someone knows how to tap DFI injector into 3 SGTE engine, let me know. I ran an extra 100 pound an hour injector on a boost switch on my first turbo G10. Yeah, having a like a cold start injector, all that was done too. A lot of guys did that with the Dodge 2.2 turbo stuff. I don't have room to run them underneath. I'm really thinking about running them inside the manifold. I like that idea. I've only found 7 injectors that have 3 GIC at the top, and I'm going to build some kind of, I'm sure, rail. See, that's my thing. I have to, when you do this, and I had to do this, luckily the rail that TWM sold with their kit that I did on the Honda, it also included the little slider clips to hold the injector in the rail. So you didn't have to, it didn't have to be bolted down to something to sandwich the rail and the intake manifold, or sandwich the injector between the rail and the intake manifold to stop it from, because, you know, you have 40, 50, 60 pounds of fuel pressure, and it would just push the rail off the injector and just spray fuel over everywhere. So these little sliding clips hold the injector in place in the rail, because the rail has a receiver groove on it. And so that's essentially what you need, or the factory has the little clips that will hold them in too. So that's what you need for something where we're trying to, it makes it a lot easier if you're trying to, you know, just mount the injectors above the opening of the intake port. It makes it a lot easier if you can do that rather than having to figure out a way to, you know, get a way to hold them in. Charles, who is that directed at? The Yashio factory has been campaigning putting R35 GTR injectors on this SR20 because they have a better spray pattern. Always want to do 2 sets of injectors. We've run dual injectors on stuff before. Keep in mind, wet flow is different than dry flow. So I'm sensing that there's a point coming here. Two sets come with their own unique issues, but if you need it, you can use it. Max for I like to run was 1200 cc's, but with the M1, I needed a secondary set. I went with 2000s. Injector location would work for a nitrous fogger, but not so much for fuel injection due to the spray pattern mostly. What injector location are you talking about? It's a good example of this, the dual throttle body LT6. I haven't seen, do they have dual throttle bodies going into the plenum, or do they have, I know that they have connectors joining plenum volume inside the manifold itself, like this was done, like we did taking it on and off, but they just have a divider just like Ford did. I mean, lots of people, lots of OEMs have done this. It's been around forever. But having a divider inside that opens and closes a valve. In fact, I heard that they have multiple ones. I haven't looked at a cutaway or anything of the intake manifold yet, but I think that they're doing that. And it wouldn't surprise me if they're doing different runner lengths too. About a CID intake, unfortunately didn't have the upper injector spot done. I didn't know anything about injector placement then. And the other thing to think about is, in my opinion, if you change the injector placement by an inch, I just don't know how much. I don't have a feel for, like, it's for every inch it's this much power or it's this much cooling, because we changed from, well, actually the TWM wasn't a dramatic change because where they position their injector is not down at the port. They have a provision for you to do that there, but their injector was at least a third of a way up the runner, up the individual runner manifold. We just placed it going in, but it would be an even bigger change if it was down at the head port, like where factory ones are. I did high mount injectors on one, CBR 600, and dual on the other. Standard style throttle body or carb style, what should I get? What kind of intake manifold do you have? And so that you know, I ran a test on a 4150 flanged intake manifold, and we ran a 4150 4-hole throttle body. This was port injected. And then we ran an elbow with a single, like, 102 millimeter throttle body, and they made the same power. Because the thing that was going to dictate the power, unless you restrict it somehow with a really small throttle opening, and we didn't do that on either one of these cases. The thing that's going to dictate the power is the intake manifold. Richard, I religiously watch your videos. I'm torn between what to build, going turbo. I don't have E85 in my town. You can still make good power on pump gas. Just, you just run a little, use a little less compression and stuff. Let's see. Scrolling back. Oh, here we go. Tried using additional injectors in the late 80s and early 90s, and placement made a huge difference. Yeah, I have a 4.8 to play with, or a 6-liter build. Both of those are good. 6-liter better, maybe because it's bigger. Would placement be critical on a boosted application? Yes, it still does the same thing. In fact, I would suspect that injector placement would yield even bigger power gains on a boosted application because you have more air. You have a bigger temperature differential to actually cool. So I think with the injector placement, you're getting all the cooling that you can, like on a naturally aspirated deal. I think there's more left in reserve. So I think if the temperature was a little bit hotter, I think you might get better gains, but I would like to test that and see. Do different fuels like different positions? I wouldn't think so. Does E85 like mid runners, gasoline like close to the head, spraying on the back of the valve, and one might like it high up like a carb. I haven't done enough of that testing, honestly, to know. I don't think so, but unless we tried that to see if one, test all three of them in all the different positions, let's say, down at the head and then midway and then at the entry, and see if you saw some sort of trend, and then also see if you saw some sort of trend on more than just one test. You'd have to do it. You'd have to do a bunch of tests. Do you test injector top of the intake runner? Did I test it? I have before, yeah, but in the photo that I showed, that one didn't work in the plenum. Considering mounting mine like F1 did 8 years ago or 10 years ago, if you see F1 Renault on YouTube, you'll see an example. I ran an extra injector in my Ford 2.3. They used to do that, the little microfueler things. I think that's what the Callaway twin turbo did. I think that they had a little microfueler going into, of all things, spraying in before the tune port deal. And that to me would be like kind of a nightmarish scenario, but I guess it worked. Is the amount of fuel required for each additional pound of boost linear? No, because the power gain that you get from each pound of boost isn't linear. The amount of fuel required for each horsepower is linear. Just generally speaking, Richard, when you're talking about someone having their mind made up, yeah, I think Charles, we're probably all guilty of that. 2000 BMWs are cool, and all but the 2010 DFI cars are really cool. Ron, I do. Somebody had told me that they had multiple valves in there. Like I said, I haven't looked inside to see. I intake manifolds I'm really fascinated by, and I should take a look at that. Anthony, you put a 323 together? Probably do 2 sets of 1,000 FICs if I ask about my perfect injector setup. You wouldn't do something smaller than that, Admiral? What about regular main injectors down close to the heads, and then when you get into boost, supplemental injectors as far as for charge cooling? You can do it that way. Because that's what Formula One did. The injectors that they had for power were not the ones that they used for yellow flag laps. Richard, love the videos. Going to do a Radar kit on my 496 Mercruiser with stock heads, including a 203 intake, a cam, intake manifold. What ballast ring should I run? Whose cam are you running? Are you running a Radar cam? They probably have a spring kit for that. Just picked up a 94 Cobra and watched a lot of your modular 464 valve videos. 98's early one, yeah. That's the dual port one, the B head. Getaway, what's up? Sliding fuel rail, yep. And all I found was in my sliding technique that I used, I found an area where it made the same power and it was all good. And then I found other areas where I could lose lots of power. I didn't find one where it's like, oh yeah, that's like that made 20 more. That didn't happen. I found an area where it worked and then lots of areas where it didn't. Any idea if there are kits to make it easy to go from CARB to EFI, or is each conversion a custom job usually? Yeah, because you have to run some sort of management system. But yeah, Charles is saying a Holly Sniper. Fast makes one, Holly makes them, Tech makes them. These little 4-hole throttle body deals. I normally don't recommend those. Just upgraded to a 330. My extra injector on the Ford 2.3 was controlled by a box with one input, a map hose. Calibration was 5 points. Boost versus injector pulse width. Cool. I just tapped one and it showed the results. So there's a false yes in the poll. I just skimmed through an article. The LT6 manifold has 3 valves, 2 work in tandem, and the other is independent. It seems to be the reason why the engine is such a nice torque curve. Yeah, you can do all kinds of trickery there. We ever do a Frankenstein 4G63T video? Probably not. I've done some stuff on early eclipses and stuff, but it was all chassis dyno stuff. The poll is blank for you. You need to turn your computer off. And then turn it back on. Because I'm showing that it's still there. It is still there, I swear. 2 Weimaraner's, German shorthair pointers. 13.5. 77 Cobra with a V6. Didn't they have a base V6? Was it was 77? Was that the still was that a 2.3? When did they have that 3.8 liter V6? Love the 2.4 4G63s. Is that a hybrid of the... That's not the Starion motor, is it? A Starion with the 4-valve head on it? Porsche 997 also had those manifold valves. And then Ferraris had them. Honda had the dual runner GSR stuff. And probably more stuff later on. Cobra 2. I like the Cobra 2. I like a King Cobra. 94. No, this is way earlier than that. This was a Fox car. '82 to 2004, 3.8 liter. I have a 3.8 liter V6 out of a 1984 Fox Mustang. So that's what I was talking about. I remember a guy that I went to school with I heard him say this. I think he may have even said it to me. I thought he was talking to somebody else. I thought I was just listening in on it. And he was bragging about his Fox Mustang because one of the other guys had a Boss, not a Boss like the Coyote one, but had a 302 Mustang, and his was an 84 or 5. I think it was an 85. But this other guy had the 3.8 liter V6, and I remember him bragging, "Yeah, this has got the 3.8 liter V6. That's bigger than any V6 Porsche ever makes." I'm like, "Yeah, but it still has about half the horsepower, so you're not winning there." Building my first 540 cubic inch big block. It's a Gen 5. I don't know what you mean by what are my thoughts. Oh, the starting was a 2.6. Okay. My next dog will be named Senna or Milner. Milner. It won't be what's his new axe? Stormbreaker. Could be 2.8 layer V6. It's not 2.8 layer, it was a 3.8 layer. Another dual injection system, one found in the Lotus Type 910 engines. It had 4 primaries and 2 secondary injectors in the boost tick. Cool. Only time I relocate injectors when I rolled my 280Z 9 times. That's a lot. They pop through the hood. The 78 Black King Cobra, 140 Angry Ponies. I know all of it, right? Overly built. What intake is on there? You want 6,000 RPM? I still would pick a 268 or a 274 cam for that if it's in a small block Ford. G64 crank, longer stroke. Okay. The Frankenstein 4G60s are essentially bored over to a 2.4 liter and stroke, depending on if you want to swap the heads. Those motors get solid numbers. Oh, in the Cobra 2, yeah. Too bad no aftermarket variable length intake runners exist for a Gen 3 small block. Will be okay to run 6.2 truck intake valves on an LS3 head. Yeah, they're going to be heavier, but that's okay. You're not if you're not revving it really high. Ironically, Porsche has the largest 6-cylinder in a production car. I know GMC made the largest V6 in a production vehicle, but I'm comparing car to car. Because doesn't Porsche make a 4-liter one now? Starting Conquest was sure fast for the rated 180 horsepower. On a Gap TPI 305 Z28. And wasn't the 180 was a slab side one, right? But didn't the other ones make 205 or something? The intercooled version. This render length power shorter, more power on top, more power down low is the same on all engines, 4-valve, 2-valve. Yes, the reflected wave still has to travel the same distance. Doesn't matter where it's coming from. There are companies that are boring and stroking the 4-liter to 4.5 liter. Is there enough room to do that? Do they have enough material for that? Seven. Okay, so if yours was modified, then right, it wasn't a stock, because a stock Starion won't beat a stock tuned Ford Camaro. Blackbird. Does anybody have any ideas or thoughts for Blackbird on like a first car. He's 15. 503 wheel horsepower. That's a lot. From a 4-liter 6-cylinder. It's pretty impressive numbers. Toyota Camry V6, there you go. 90s Thunderbird 3.8. I think a Honda Civic. Corollas are good. It's lots and lots of power. How's our poll doing? 74% are saying no to the multiple injectors or relocate injectors. So not very many people have done that. Turn so much stuff up with torque from turbos. I tend to use boost control to bring in power after the car's rolling. Tired of fixing stuff. It's easy to it's easy to do too much. Easy to get too enthusiastic. Can I take a picture of a Pro Charger kit for a small block Chevy so I can screenshot it? I don't know how it looked. Pro Charger has lots of photos up on their channel or up on their website. And if you did a Google search for small block Chevy Pro Charger kit, only about 100 million of them would come up. 100 bajillion. The problem with making lots and lots of power is that all the other things have to have lots and lots of too. You have to have lots and lots of brakes, lots and lots of transmission, lots and lots of handling. Yeah, Burns, a 5-liter Ford, I don't think is something for a first car anymore. I think it's too expensive. I think a guy should get a Honda Civic. It's easy to work on, lasts forever. You can still modify them. You can still add boost to them, and they're still fun. Blown T-Birds are hard to come by these days. Thunderbird Turbo Coupe. When was it? I can't say I've never seen one. Well, I haven't ever seen one in the wrecking yard that I can remember. I have seen 2 of the Super Coupes, saw them on the same day. The blown T-Birds. Okay. Yeah, not the turbo ones. I've never seen a turbo T-Bird in the wrecking yard. Corollas are good. I love Corollas. I don't see as many of those, though. Get one of the older Volvos. Again, those last a long time, too. I like the Volvos that had the sliding speedometer. I remember riding in a buddy of mine's. His dad had one, and we were driving it, and I'm like, "What is that?" He goes, "Oh, that's a speedometer." Dodge SRT4, Integra, RSX Type S, Nissan SR20. Oh yeah, you'd be really unique if you had a Nissan Sentra SER. I do like the Sentras. I like the early ones though. The little boxy 2002-ish kind of things. Cobalt. Mighty CARB launches turbo to 4,000 or 400,000 mile Camry. All those motors work good. Get a van. Get a creepy van. I do like that Scooby-Doo van that who are they friends of Garrett did. Vans need to have windows, and that should really be a law, right? You can get a Renault Espace van. Stay away from the Ecotechs. Zoo truck. Why do you want to use a short rod in it? I don't think if you have a combination of the stroke length that you have and the rod length and the piston, if you have that combination and it will go in there, you're not going to do any with rod length. You're not going to do anything to the RPM range. You're just connecting the piston to the to the crankshaft. So the big things that you would be concerned with for power production would be the heads of the cam and the intake manifold, because you have the displacement and somehow you have some kind of compression in there. 30,000's top and bottom ring on a turbo LS2 at 15 pounds. That's more than enough ring gap. Yeah, you're good. Don't know what Pro Charger kit to buy for a small block Chevy. There's different ones. Well, what motor do you have? What's done to it, and how much power do you want to make? And then we can tell you what supercharger you should get for that. They did smash that mystery machine. Oh, that's too bad. Yeah, 3,000s or 3,000s or 30,000s. Already have them. ARP hardware, concerned about longevity and side loading on the walls. My guess is you won't have the motor long enough where that would ever be a concern. $7,000 per inch of bore is a go-to for real high boost stuff. Turbo coupe can be had for 5,000. So supercharger is different from Pro Charger. I'm confused. A Pro Charger is a supercharger. The word supercharger encompasses all the different kinds of superchargers. So you have a Pro Charger, which is a centrifugal supercharger. You have an Eaton or TVS or lots of different ones that are Roots superchargers. You have twin screw superchargers. You have Latham axial superchargers, Vortec, and there's different kinds of centrifugal superchargers. And then you have turbochargers. Those are the different things. Junkyard small block Ford GT40P heads. Is it a good combo? Yes. And what's the maximum boost you run on a junkyard build motor? Is a little over 100,000. The critical thing is really going to be ring gap. And then if you have that on a 302 block, you're going to be limited in the amount of power you can make anyway. Turbo superchargers. Turbos are known as turbo superchargers originally. Horse torques, horse purrs. Yes. I don't know. People are trying to be clever or whatever. So we're going to go ahead and close our poll out. There doesn't seem to be a lot of interest in that. Multiple injectors or relocated injectors. What do you think is the best looking tunnel ram CARB velocity stack combo? I don't know. Might be late to the party, but I always had the idea if you had a long enough runners, you would put your secondary injectors further from the flange at high load, high airspeeds. Yeah, we talked about that. If you're going to do multiple injectors and you have one down at the intersection of the head and the intake manifold for like drivability, and then you could add the other one, feed the other one in as would be required like under boost, that would be ideal. But if you just had it one set of injectors and they were in the intake runner, then you'd have them up there somewhere in the port, a ways away from the valve or from the intersection of the intake manifold and the head port. Good ring back Good ring gap for 8 pounds of boost. Yeah, if this was the 30,000s, that's more than enough for 8 pounds. I have a BDS 871 with twin dominators. That's good. Good combo. I have an old ZX6 RRRR race bike that had extra injectors in the airbox. The LS versus Coyote test, isn't the 95 LT5 more of a contender? You mean the 01 motor? More of a contender to what? You're going to compare a 95 motor to a 2011 motor? And a motor that they made a couple hundred of? I do like that motor, but it's not really a comparison thing. And I can't do a comparison of that anyways because I don't have any engine dyno data on it. My old man was a big fan of yours, got me into your videos. Tell him thank you very much and welcome. I was waiting for my son today at the doctor's, and one of the guys who was waiting in the waiting room walked up and said, "Hey, I watched your stuff, man. It was kind of cool." What's the real sweet spot of compression for boost? The compression that allows you not to have detonation with whatever combination of octane and boost that you're running. I wonder if Calvin's got the North Star running. Did he just do a video on talking about it? I thought I didn't watch all of it, so I didn't know if he'd ran it. I can call him and ask him. Yeah, with the again, whatever your stock compression is, Charles is right. Whatever you have in your LS is going to be fine. What would you recommend for max boost for a cast piston? Well, we ran 28 pounds on stock LS cast piston, so it's less than that. In any of the factory LS things are fine. Even we've run boost on the factory like LS3 stuff, and it's fine. All good. The LS is a gift from God, and others won't live at that boost level. Yeah, I've never tried to run 28 pounds on a 5-liter Ford. I don't think I'm trying to think of the most boosted I've run. We did 1,000+ horsepower stuff, but I know at least one of them was a dart block. One of them was an aftermarket 351 block. One of them was a regular 351 block. I don't think I've run. I think 775 probably is the most I've done on a factory 302 block. If you can convert a boosted engine to direct injection, it would be more beneficial and more performance-oriented head. The head, you'd have to decide by the other things that are happening with the head. Does it flow well? What valve sizes it has? What's the valve orientation? What is the port entry look? All that stuff. That would be head. That would be the head variable specifics. But the DI could help with helping eliminate detonation. The one downside, and the other thing that the DI does is make it an airflow only, a dry flow, if you will. So the head effectively flows more than a wet flow head does. But the thing that's the downside to DI is you have to have gigantic injectors to like if you're going to run E85 or methanol would be even crazier. It's hard to get enough injector size in the DI stuff, like on the LT stuff. Pump gas, thoughts on L28ET with good management. How much booster are you wanting to run? How much power? Is it a modified one? I mean, an intercooled one on pump gas, 9-to-1 is fine. Does a modular 4.6 even hold a candle boost wise to an LS? Yeah, in fact, if you did that question as an absolute, an LS will not make as much power has not made as much power as a modular Ford has. Mahovitz motors with a stock-ish blocks have made way more power than anybody's made with a stock LS block. We run 24 pounds on 5.3s for years with forged pistons, no issues. C10 drag race, cool. Mercedes M606. Unless it's a Cobra forged. Customer's dropping off a buggy to have a 4.3 put in it and a turbo setup built, asking how much he could run. We got the rings to 25, that engine, that going into it. 4.3 is going to be a 4-inch bore, right? Yeah, I would rather have something that has less boost and more reliability myself. I would rather be able to go out every time and run 2 or 3 or even 5 pounds less boost, whatever, and be able to go out to like if it's a road race car or a off-road buggy or whatever it is, to be able to go out and hammer on it all the time and have fun and go, yeah, would I want another 100 horsepower? Yes. The answer is always yes. But and it's just like when we used to road race, we'd tell people like, yeah, but you don't you want to make more power? I'm like, no, I don't want to make more power yet. What I want is the car to work. I want it to handle well. I want it to brake well. I want it to, because going fast in a straight line is really easy. I want it to do all the things, and I want it to do all those things well, and then we can add power. 306 small block, 1101 trick flow. N91 or Comp 282 roller cam with the Edelbrock Pro Flow 4 be a good EFI choice, or are there better options for self-learning EFI? I'd never run the Edelbrock Pro Flow 4. I've never run their management system, so I don't know anything about that. And I don't know what the specs are on Anderson's N91, or I know what the 282 hydraulic roller is. And you have Trick Flow 170s, so are they 11R heads? Or are they 170 just trick flow twisted wedge heads? S-gas twisted wedge. So I don't think I'd go to a 282 cam. Are you using this as a drag race thing, or is this going to be a driver? If it's a driver, I wouldn't put a 282 cam in it. I wouldn't put a single plane intake manifold on it either, if that's what you were thinking about doing. Do you have to ring gap coyotes? Guys are the only thing that coyote guys talk about is unopened. My motor's unopened. I'm running 1,000,000 pounds of boost or whatever. I don't know what the factory gaps are, so I don't know if guys say that they're doing it. They're doing it. I wouldn't do it. I would put gap in it. In my opinion, it's just guys that are lazy, and don't want to go through that, because I don't know how a motor. I don't know how it changes the laws of physics, because rings grow based on temperature, and I don't know if you're putting that much power into it. I don't know how you're not getting ring growth, and I don't know how if it has a factory gap in the teens, I don't know how you're not, breaking pistons. So Dominator carbs on a tunnel ram drive poorly compared to 850s, looking for good off-idle response, low to mid-range power. Dominators look so good, but is that too much carb? I wouldn't pick Dominator carburetors for low speed off idle drivability. I wouldn't even pick multiple carburetors for for off idle response. I would pick a single carburetor and a dual plane manifold. driver and a Fox body with 410 gears. Okay, I mean the cam will sound cammy, so if you want it to sound like that, that's okay. I just don't think it'll drive as well. That's a good size cam, and you don't really have enough cylinder head to take advantage of that camshaft, I don't think. How do you feel about the sheet metal intakes for the LS compared to a fast? There's no sheet metal intake manifold that's even close to a fast in terms of power production. But the sheet metal manifolds cost less and they look fancy. One more minute. Just the sheet metals, unless it's your only option. They look fancy, especially the polished ones, but they lose. I mean, I have videos up of those sheet metal eBay manifolds or snipers or whatever you want to call them. Tech made some, offered some too. I don't know what they're doing now, but I've run lots and lots of tests of those manifolds, so you can see up on the channel what they do and what they don't do. Working on a torque storm kit for my LS, and people keep recommending them, but I like the fast intake, so it's probably going to go with that. I would pick a fast, especially with a torque storm. The torque storm is a centrifugal blower, and it's going to want to run, like the more RPM you run, the more boost you're going to run. But the torque storm is a centrifugal blower, so it's going to have low boost down low, and then its highest boost at whatever your maximum engine speed is, and then it's going to rise up from there to there. The short runner fabricated manifolds are short runners. They're going to lose power down low, kind of just like a centrifugal supercharger does. So the thing's not going to feel very fast. It will feel much better with a fast manifold on there. Shadow Ops. What applications did they have for LS motors in 1996? I thought 99 was the start of all that. And before he can even answer, it is time to go. But thank you guys all for showing up. I will be back tomorrow. I'm working on, I don't know, kind of on the fence about LS3 versus Coyotes, as the LS guys are happy. But also I want to do a L83 versus Coyote, because, you know, an L83 is definitely better than a 5.3 is. So we'll see. You know, lots of stuff, lots of things to think about, lots of stuff to choose, but I will I'll have something on. I'll have something for you guys in the morning. Thank you all for showing up. I'll be back tomorrow. Bam, 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 bam.